take it down.
Are you explaining Delvecraft to me?
Spoiler alert, with more than half of Season 2 of The Rings of Power completed, it appears like danger is present at every turn, being one of the darkest Lord of the Rings episodes to date. The most recent episode does not hold back, with so many plots and personalities to keep track of, though it is understandable if you were a little unclear about our position around Middle-earth. Here, we discuss every significant development from Annatar's most recent scheme to the true extent of Khazad-dûm's peril. Furthermore, the events occurring in Numenor may have significant effects for all of Middle-earth. Take this as a spoiler alert before we delve any farther into one of the greatest series on Amazon Prime Video. Be sure to catch up on The Rings of Power Season 2 Episode 5 before continuing, as we will be delving into some important aspects about it below. Welcome to Movie Spy. The impact and power of the new rings loom large in Khazad-dûm at the start of the most recent episode of the fantasy epic. Using the power of his ring to direct his soldiers where to dig, King Durin is bringing light into the Mountain Kingdom. Not everyone, though, is thrilled with his strategy. Disa confides in Prince Durin that she fears the power of it would be too alluring for the leader to control. And as we see a little later, it is already generating problems when the king informs the other Dwarven lords that in order to utilize the rings, they must pay a bounty. Disa purchases a tuning crystal later in the episode, but she misplaces it in the mine's tunnels. She calls out to discover it as she ventures into the darkness, but something horrifying responds from the mountain's depths. This triggers danger bells for Disa and Prince Durin as the king vows to break his constraints and keep digging deeper into Khazad-dûm to collect more wealth. How could something go wrong? Meanwhile, in Eregion, Sauron and Annatar form is still controlling Celebrimbor and the operations at the Elven Forge. They will also be surprised by Celebrimbor with the Ithilden-covered doors of Durin. Given that males suffer the most in Middle-earth, Annatar is attempting to persuade Celebrimbor to produce rings specifically for men. Is not that a game you play? At one point, he asks Annatar, sowing seeds in others' minds, nearly revealing the entire masquerade. Undeterred, Celebrimbor refuses, getting Annatar to carry on the mission on his own after he swears to find men who are pure of heart. He declares, "I will make the 9 myself," but it turns out to be more difficult than he anticipated. When Mordania puts on one of the rings they have been working on and enters the invisible realm, she experiences the harsh side of this. It was tall, and its skin was made of flames, the woman says, describing the beast that she saw pursuing them. Taking advantage of the situation, Annatar tries to convince Celebrimbor to assist with the creation of the rings. She also uses Mordania's snarky remark that she resembles Galadriel to her advantage. Slow down, fans of Galadriel. Durin expresses his concerns about how the rings have affected his father at this point, which causes the plots of the dwarves and the elves to diverge. Even the ringmakers could not have corrupted them, according to Celebrimbor. He confronts Annatar about it, inquiring as to whether or not he has been manipulating the rings. She responds that the tainted ones were caused by his lie of Gil-galad. But in the end, Celebrimbor determines they have to start over with the next set of rings, bringing purity into the 9, which works well in his advantage. As the men's tension increases, Numenor is also not immune to political maneuvering. Since ascending to the throne, Pharazôn has chosen to firmly establish his rule. He tells his son Kemen to put an end to anyone who might be a traitor. He also, menacingly, informs him that his mother foretold that he would come to ill ends. If he gets down to business, Pharazôn will explain how. Elendil attempts to advise Muriel to take a stance, as the Sea Guard will watch out for her in another scene. But now that she is so consumed with the possibility that Numenor's fate has changed, she wants to maintain the status quo. This puts Elendil in a difficult situation over whether to demonstrate allegiance, particularly because his daughter Aerion has declared herself a member of Team Pharazôn. He ultimately chooses not to, and along with his troops, he gives Kemen his captain's robes. In the last act, when he is worshipping in the temple for the lost souls, Kemen's men march in and overthrow him and Valandil. This is a decision that has bloody consequences. As Valandil challenges Kemen and points his blade at his neck, Kemen breaks a priceless artifact, but Elendil instructs him not to murder him. Kemen is not as honorable. He kills Valandil in the most cowardly manner by stabbing him in the back. This week, the elves are mostly absent from our view outside of the forge, with the exception of a brief update during which Gil-galad is deciding whether to direct his energies toward Adar or Eregion. As we have a little peek at how the orc's father is handling his new prisoner Galadriel, he chooses the latter. He says to her, I brought you here not as a prisoner, but as a potential ally. We have a common adversary. After all, be careful, Sauron. Doors of Durin. It was perhaps inevitable that we would see Ithilden in its most well-known application on the Doors of Durin, given that Celebrimbor invented it earlier in Season 2. In the most recent episode, Narvi reveals the door's design and says it will be guarded by a password known only to friends. Given that Frodo and the Fellowship need to use this password in order to enter Moria, those who are familiar with the Lord of the Rings will know exactly what it is. Melon is the elven word for friends. Palantir. Muriel talks with Elendil about the vision he had in the Palantir, one of the crystal balls that J.R.R. Tolkien uses to foretell future events in his books. In Elendil's vision, he saw himself riding aimlessly through an unfamiliar city. Even if it reassures Muriel, it seems very obvious that it cannot mean anything good given the future of Númenor. Rings for guys. Annatar's great idea in the latest episode of The Rings of Power is to convince Celebrimbor to manufacture rings for men, 9 of them to be exact. Before he gives Celebrimbor the order to create the one ring to rule them all, Sauron supervises these last rings. He advises them to locate reliable ring bearers from Rhûn to Númenor. In The Lord of the Rings, we never truly find out who these men were, other than the Witch King of Angmar, Camul, and the unidentified ring wraiths. Is this where we may find out more about the Nazgûl? The One Ring. At one point, Merdania dosen one of the rings they are working on, which was created with a record amount of mithril. She enters the unseen world and becomes invisible as a result. Given its familiarity with the realm, it appears highly likely that this is an early prototype for the One Ring that would eventually be created. The Balrog. Disa notices something in the depths of Khazad-dûm. A sigh from beneath the surface of the ocean is heard when she uses her voice to find her tuning crystal. What is concealed beneath that? Given that we know the creature from The Lord of the Rings resides beneath the mountains and that it even made an appearance in the Season 2 trailer, it appears quite clear that it is the Balrog. Thanks for watching.